All right, guys, bang, bang. I have a very special treat for you today. Christian is here. Thank you so much for doing this, sir.
Welcome. Super happy to be on the podcast. Super excited. Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's just jump right into your background. There's a lot of people who probably know some of the work that you've done, but don't necessarily know your entire story. So where'd you grow up and kind of how did you get into business and investing?
Wow, broad question. So I grew up in Germany, to be precise, actually in Bavaria, which maybe some of you know from Oktoberfest. It's always very funny because I never drank alcohol so far. So although alcohol is like the Bavarian like basic nutrition.
And you've never drank any alcohol?
No, I didn't.
Why?
A super long story. I tried, meaning when I grew up in Bavaria, like I grew up in this super tiny village, like till I was 9, it was like 90 people. And then we moved to a town, which was 2,000 people. So it was very sheltered. And I always already early realized that I had two things which sort of are very special, which what I'm happy about is I was always a very happy child. And I was also always very good in school. And I was really afraid of losing that. So I was like, if I put something in my brain like alcohol, then maybe I'm losing that sort of perfect equilibrium. So I decided not to touch it. And then it was a stupid bet. So it was really like when we were like 13 years old, I was like, I'm never going to drink alcohol. And then all my friends were like, you're not going to make that, not in Bavaria. And then it became a bet that I'm not drinking alcohol till I'm 18. So the whole school was watching. Yeah, that I'm not drinking. And then it sort of stayed that way. Once you're not drinking, you're a designated driver. And then I really think it's really bad. So I know it's like I always spoil the party, but I don't mind if other people drink, but I just think it's not a healthy thing to do. And so I didn't start it.
I love that. All right. So you're growing up there. You moved to this town of 2,000 people. And then what do you do?
Well, I went to school, and after high school, which is in Germany, high school is like high school plus college in America. So when I was 19, I actually had 1 year of civil service, which was maybe the most important thing because till I was 19, until I was 18, till I finished high school, I was extremely set to do something academic. So I had the luck. I was really, really good in school. I got a lot of scholarships. And I was really thinking, okay, I'm going to go to university, study, become a professor or whatever. And then I had to do 1 year of civil service. So you either in Germany go to the army or you go to a hospital. And I thought as a libertarian, I didn't really know the word back then, but I thought that's really a crime that the government is telling me for 1 year of my life what to do. So I had this sort of silent revolution that I think it's maybe bad if I tell it now, but it doesn't matter. It's 20 years ago. So I didn't show up. I was always like going to the doctor and saying that I'm sick and I can't go. And I started actually speculating on the stock market. And then I did it for friends and I was managing a bit of money. And then, so in this 1 year, I changed from a very academic sort of trajectory to a very entrepreneurial one. And then I started studying economics. But I was already set now, this was 1999, I need to do my own company. This was the first internet boom. And I was like, okay, I need to find an idea. And then I had this scholarship for science. And so I had this side tutoring with two famous guys who were like biology professors. And I asked them, okay, hey, what are you doing when you're not tutoring little Christian? And they told me about an idea which was super fascinating. I understood half of it. It was practically simplified, said how you switch on and off the human DNA. And I was like, that sounds so great. I might have found the guys to start my company with. And I said, why don't we do it together? And I don't know why they said yes to a 19-year-old turning 20, but we did the company together. It was called RiboPharma. It's now called Alnylam. And it became really big because these two guys, I mean, it's all credentials to them. They had made these amazing innovation. And the company today, I mean, I sold very early, but the company today, Alnylam, is like didn't check it lately, but like $15, $16 billion company. So that was the start in biotech. I skipped uni then. I was never really there ever. And since then I'm investing, founding and investing. So I'm somewhat in between an entrepreneur and investor.
And so when you started that first company and it started to get big, you sold it at some point. What was the thought process between, trying to run the company forever and that being kind of your legacy versus selling it and going and doing other things? How did you kind of think through what you should do?
I was always meaning, it was never meaning, first of all, I was the junior partner. So the two guys were running it. Yeah. So I was raising the first funds and I was always, and this is what I am, like I would say something in between, very entrepreneurial, but also like more like an investor who wants to have a portfolio. So I'm always interested in new stuff. I don't want to do one company or one thing the whole day, the whole year. Like, so early on, like I was looking left and right and what can I build around? What else can I do? So it was always clear that I want to build up a portfolio.
Got it. That makes a ton of sense. And so today, basically, most of the things that you do are under Apeiron investment group. It's kind of family office / business. How do you kind of think through that entity?
Well, it's Apeiron. People always say Apeiron was a famous mythological horse, I think, and Apeiron, it's just the EI, is sort of the philosophical idea of the essence that everything has an essence, a core which is immutable and defines what it is, and that's the Apeiron in Greek philosophy. I'm super geek when it comes to history. So Apeiron is my family office. So we have in Apeiron, it's just my own capital. We have two funds which we span out, so to say, but I'm still the sort of the GP, and I'm also the largest LP in the funds. So we have sort of outside money in two defined strategies, but in Apeiron itself, it's just our own capital. And we do three things. We do Biotech, which is obviously where I started. We do a lot of Fintech, InsurTech, PropTech, and crypto. Which is obviously how we met. And then we do the third thing is deep tech, which is anything from space tech, AI, robotics, so all the cool stuff, real technological innovation.
So let's start with the biotech space. You have done an incredible amount. You've got Atai Life Sciences, which has led to all kinds of innovation in different companies. Maybe just start with what is your thesis on biotech, or what are the areas that you're most interested in that bucket?
A broad question. So first of all, I think biotech will be at least one of the, most likely the best performing asset class, maybe next to Bitcoin. But I think let's say one of the best performing asset classes. I think really we're going into this golden age of biotech. So what tech was, and obviously tech will still do well, but what tech was the last 2 decades, I think the next 2 decades will be biotech. So I'm super excited that practically we're going back where we started. And this is why over the last 4 or 5 years, we've built up sort of our biotech portfolio, which is at the moment around about 50% of my entire portfolio is in biotech. And it means COVID is just, if you take COVID, is one symptom is the wrong word, is one example where actually we see that people extremely value their health. So I think the same pandemic 20 years ago would have led to a different treatment, I mean different handling of it. So the fact that we more or less with a broad majority that people say, hey, let's do the lockdown. Yeah. And now don't want to go into lockdown discussions, but because it's so emotional in America, it's so political. But just if you see that the fact that people approve it, although definitely the lockdowns have a very negative effect on the economy, but also, by the way, but it's not on the health of the people indirectly, but people want the government to take care of their health, I think, more than they did 20, 30 years ago. So the priorities have shifted. Yeah. So people demand health, and I think politicians are realizing that. And a lot of politicians I'm speaking to are well, beyond COVID, we want to focus way more on keeping our voters healthy, actually. Yeah. And that means that companies, biotech companies, which deliver our product is making people hopefully healthy, yeah, that they're going to go up in value. That's, I think, is a little bit the super macro view on it. And then actually also another driver is that if you look at all the ancillary services you need to start and run a biotech company, they all have the prices of them, like gene sequencing, whatever, buying a genetic modified mouse, so that all has crashed, like partly 99% cheaper, 95% cheaper than it used to be. So many factors feeding into that I think, as I said, biotech is going to be the number one asset class over the next 10, 20 years. And
Absolutely.
then then within biotech, meaning obviously almost everything in biotech is interesting because you always help people, but our view or our main focus is on longevity and on mental health, because sort of I'm actually always very honest, like I want to be sure. So the two things or the three things I really want in life, I want to be happy, which was always like very important for me, that I sort of live my life in a way that I'm happy. And I think I am. I wake up in the morning, life is awesome. Like I feel comfortable. It doesn't mean every day is great, but like we have a basic sort of happiness feeling. So I want to be happy. Then I want to be healthy, obviously. And once you're healthy and happy, you want to live at least very long, if not forever. At least I want to live as long till I say, look, no more. I had enough Christmases. I had enough birthdays. Yeah. So and this is why we focus practically very egoistically on these two things, on mental health on the one side and on longevity on the other side.
So let's start with longevity first, because I think that one is what people are probably most familiar with out of those two. On the longevity side, how do you see the technology landscape kind of evolving? And are we talking about things that are kind of short-sighted in the sense of like, hey, if we just make you healthier, then you can live longer? Or are we talking about things that are much more long-term, like we literally want to make it so that you can live for 200 years, 250 year type stuff?
So it's getting there. It's getting to the latter one. So I think, as you said, first of all, obviously you can always say every biotech progress, which avoids us dying, like every cancer treatment, if you don't die of cancer, you're going to live longer in average. Yeah. Although, by the way, it's not, I think the number I just read was like, even if we completely would eradicate cancer, the overall life expectancy would just go up like 3 years or something, because then you die of something else when you're very old. Yeah. So it's not that easy. So what we're talking about when we talk about longevity is really finding the reason why we age. So my personal view is, and I know it's a controversial, I don't even understand why it's controversial, because I think everybody should think aging sucks. Yeah. But aging is not natural. We know how, I mean, you still look very young and hot, but like we know how the 20-year-old Anthony looks, because your DNA is the same on the day you were born, on the day you were 20, on the day you're 80. Yeah, but something is happening why the translation of sort of the construction plan for Anthony is sort of changing. So why do we get wrinkles? Why do we get gray hair? So something is going wrong. Yeah, and philosophically seen, because it's happening since humanity is thinking and recording, memorizing. I mean, we ingrained aging and dying so much in our culture and our religion that we deeply think it's natural. But the same in the medieval ages, people were thinking that the Black Death is a punishment of God. And and it was really, for them, it was miraculously, people were dying. They had these, whatever, things on the skin, and somewhere they were dying. And it was like, okay, it must be a punishment of God. And just like very later, we found out, no, it's a bacterium, yeah, and we can cure it, yeah. And the same, I think, somewhere we're gonna see, and we start actually already now to understand why we're aging, yeah, and we can say it is a disease. And once we understand why we're aging, we will be able to stop it, slow it down, stop it, and someone will even be able to reverse it. Yeah, so that's natural. That's how humans progress. Yeah, and this is what we focus on. So really pushing the boundaries of understanding aging, and hopefully finding sort of cures or slowing it down, and by that you automatically expand life expectancy much more than what is now seen to be normal.
Over the last 2 years, or prior to the last 2 years, I knew nothing about this stuff. And I started to look more into it when I heard, I think it was David Sinclair, maybe, was the guy who basically started talking about, aging is a disease. Right. And that's a framework that I think most people don't think of it through. But when you start to really understand kind of what's happening in the body, one, it becomes very fascinating that, like, yes, it is more likely that this is a disease than anything. And it just so happens that we all get it. But also, two, is it feels like we've made pretty far advancements in understanding. How far have the advancements, though, been in how do we actually address it, or how do we take life expectancy from, kind of late 70s, early 80s to, let's say, 150 years? Like, is that something that's likely to happen quickly? Is that something where, there's somebody who's born today that will live to 150? How do you kind of just think through the progress that's being made?
Again, these are all hopefully educated guesses I'm making, but I think if somebody is born today will have the potential to live some 100 years. Because also what people underestimate is, and again, by the way, but have to say I'm a super optimist for technology in general and for progress, but I think we're underestimating exponential growth in biotech. So we all are used to, like, if you look at our iPhone, meaning what was it, like 11 years ago, 12 years ago, there was no iPhone. When was it? Like, it was 10, 12 years ago, I think it started.
2007.
Yeah. And if you then see how much has changed and how much progress we had in 10, 12 years. Yeah. So we tend not to see that automatically in biotech because because we have these sort of phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, so which takes a long time. So what people see now, actually, everything the normal person sees coming out of the biotech industry to market is actually technology from 10 years ago. So, and what's actually happening right now is that we see the same exponential growth. Yeah, we have seen in a lot of other technologies. We're also seeing in biotech, but the consumer, so to say, will really start realizing that in maybe 5 years from now. But like, I firmly believe, like, in the next 10 to 20 years, we will see enormous progress in biotech on all fronts, which a lot of people maybe at the moment can't grasp. So if you think that through, if you're like 40 years old at the moment, your life expectancy today is, let's say, 80 for the sake to make it simple. So you have a 40-year remaining life expectancy. So, and now think about it. If you look at other technologies where you realize what exponential growth is, what in these 40 years of exponential growth can and will happen. I think it's really hard to imagine. So let's say just now, to be easy and simple and conservative, that we will be able to, within the next 20, 30, 40 years, to push life expectancy 20 years. So from 80-ish to 100. But that adds another 20 years of optionality. So the way I look at all of that is pure optionality. I want to have optionality because I think we're actually right at the inflection point where this all takes off. Yeah. And my view is, if I survive the next 20 years, then sort of the game is open for way longer. Yeah. And this is why, sorry for the long explanation, but if I throw out now, I believe I can be 150, 200, whatever, people say, okay, he's crazy. But if you see that it's not there will be not a day where we wake up in the morning and you're going to read the headline, oh, life expectancy jumped from 80, 85 to 150, but it's sort of a gradual sort of increase. And I just need to make sure that I'm always still alive when the next breakthrough is happening, if it makes sense.
Absolutely. And last thing on the longevity before we move on is just, what do you do personally in terms of kind of positioning yourself for the highest probability or longest life? Are there things that you eat or drink or certain habits that you have that you're focused on?
Well, I have a lot. So I tried, because I'm also very geeky in that. So I take, I think, like 40 pills a day, like everything, like water is not bad. Like, no, so, but I'll actually, first of all, by the way, so again, I'm 42. So what is the main risk for me, for somebody who's around 40? Yeah, it's actually in the next, again, and just focused on, let's make it simple, to not die the next 20 years. So the one is like not getting a cardiovascular disease. Yeah. The second one is not getting cancer. And the third one is not getting, not have an accident. So if you're 40 and if you avoid having cancer, a cardiovascular disease, or an accident, the likelihood that you're still around when you're 60 is actually pretty high. So my whole regime is centered around risk mitigation. So I'm not skiing. I'm really wherever I can. I'm not going on a German Autobahn, because driving a car is insanely risky. I'm really trying to think through not doing any stupid, risky thing to avoid the accidents. Second, and then the second is like have a health regime which is focused on not getting cancer and not getting a cardiovascular disease, which is a lot. But like the main things are alcohol is really bad. Like I can come back to that. I know I'm a party pooper, but like alcohol is really bad. Smoking is really bad. So by the way, it's these famous 80-20 rules. You can do a lot, but if you sort of focus on, let's say, 5-6 core things, like no alcohol, no smoking. I'm obsessed with sleep. So I think you have to, meaning there is this great book, because I can tell you now in 5 minutes what that guy has put in a book, which is amazing. It's called Why We Sleep from Matthew Walker. And it just shows you the statistics, what's happening with your body when you sleep too little. Yeah. So for example, I try to have the luxury to not wake up with an alarm clock. So I always try to do emails in the morning so I can wake up whenever I want, so my body can take the sleep. And I need like around about 8 hours. By the way, there's also no chance that you train yourself to sleep less. If anybody thinks that, it's always a disastrous outcome. You have a natural genetic sleep need, and you need to keep it. So sleep, no alcohol, getting your basic nutrition. What David Sinclair is actually promoting, which is very good, is NMN and NAD+, which is sort of I don't want to say it's a vitamin because it isn't, but it's like a nutrition, what you can get. Resveratrol is good. Fasting is great. So I don't eat, or I don't have any calorie intake for 16 hours a day. So I do every day forever, like since years, intermittent fasting, because it's the way I can integrate it easy in my life. Checkup is super important. Yeah, a lot of bad things you see happening, like you can, if you really would be about to get a heart attack, you can see that a year or partly two with the right sort of checkup, cancer, whatever. So if you get it, if you see it early, it's not that bad. So I do a checkup every year. Like, that may be the main things, but I have a whole list of stuff.
I think that's a fantastic.
Metformin is great. Which is, by the way, one of the first sort of longevity drugs, meaning, by the way, this is obviously, I'm not a doctor, obviously everybody needs to consult, but like metformin is a diabetes drug, which seems to have a very positive effect on aging.
Got it. And then from a diet standpoint, you said intermittent fasting, but when you do you eat any specific type of diet?
I try to do, but I think there is a little bit more complicated. I don't think it's a little bit also how your body reacts on certain stuff. So I do a low carb diet, but because I know I react badly on carbs, at least on the sort of bad ones, bread, pasta, whatever, but other people might need it. So but in generally, I'm in the sort of little meat, not zero meat, but a lot of fish, a lot of
kind of Mediterranean or yeah, got it. All right, let's switch gears to mental health. I feel like this has been thrust into the kind of main stage with COVID and the lockdowns and all of that. You've got a very specific, I think, one view on mental health in general and kind of how big of a problem it is, but also what some of the solutions are. Just walk me through kind of why you're so interested in this space.
Okay, why I'm interested. I mean, it came a little bit by, I told you, like on one side, I was always interested for myself, completely egoistic in being happy. And I'm sure I have to attribute it to my parents. So my parents always gave me, I have a super relationship. They gave me all the love I needed. And they always sort of gave me the feeling that I should be who I want to be. Like, so there was but I coming from a very basic background. It was zero centered around sort of success or whatever. It was just like sort of be a happy child, like do whatever you want. There was zero pressure to do X or whatever. Yeah. So, but I think so. I always, first of all, I was always and I am happy, but I also was always interested, because somewhere in around 20, I started figuring out other people's are actually not always happy. So many, we come in a second to mental health when you really say depression and sort of the very sort of the defined illness. But what always negatively fascinated me, that if you look at humans, like while maybe 15% of the world population have really like a clinically diagnosed mental health issue like depression or whatever, I think there are very little people who truly would say that they are happy. So I think there is a huge part in between, like who would say, well, I'm not depressed, but I'm also not really happy. So I was always interested in that. I produced a movie which did very well, which was called Hector and the Search for Happiness, with some cool people like Rosamund Pike and Christopher Plummer. So there's always this happiness thing. And then I had this one evening where actually friends were setting me up a bit, because so I was at a dinner and there was a very famous neuroscientist who's actually sort of also like sort of the drug czar in Germany, like for the public opinion on what's good, what's bad, like. And they told him, they said, oh, you need to loosen up, Christian, a bit, because then he could drink alcohol with us tonight. So they were thinking like, this guy could convince Christian to drink one glass of alcohol. Yeah. And so they sat me next to him and were like, this guy can tell you, you're not going to die when you drink alcohol. I was like, look, guys, I know I'm not going to die. The only reason why I'm so strictly not drinking alcohol now is because the social pressure is so high once you start. So the good thing is everybody knows Christian is not drinking. So nobody, even when I did business in China or whatever, nobody's bothering me. Yeah. Which is very rare, because normally and but I started talking to the guy. I can't say the name because he's always a little bit worried to what comes next, what he promoted. And I was like, look, I'm super pragmatic. I'm an investor. Let's go through all the drugs out there, like legal and illegal. And if you can tell me there is one drug who has more upsides than downsides, I'm completely up for it. Like, or let's think about it. And he pulled up actually a chart. And for everybody who's watching, you need to watch the chart or Google it because it's another colleague of him here in London, who in the meantime is also a good acquaintance, Professor David Nutt, like Nutt. And if you Google David Nutt chart, then his famous chart comes up. What he did, he ranked every single drug, legal and illegal, actually how risky it is. And without spoiling the surprise, but alcohol comes out first. So in a overall risk assessment, actually alcohol, and this was actually a little bit the controversial part of his study, but it's a complete accurate study. Alcohol is in an overall risk assessment is a little bit more risky than heroin. Heroin came second, and then came crack cocaine, whatever. So in the chart, like you see, like the very bad at the beginning, and then at the very end, practically no risk came all the psychedelics like MDMA, magic mushrooms, LSD. And this guy, this is why I can't say the name, was like, Christian, don't touch the rest. Don't even touch alcohol. Yeah, don't touch heroin, obviously. Don't touch anything of these bad stuff because you see it's bad. But you should do actually psychedelics. And you should especially do magic mushrooms. And I was like, look, you're insane. Like, it's an illegal drug. I don't even drink alcohol, although I saw it in front of me that alcohol is so more bad. And you can't even rate it because magic mushrooms have really like low risk, or practically the only risk of mushrooms, which he told me, was like you can sort of hurt yourself or have an accident when you do it. But I was like, look, no, I'm not going to do it. I stay like completely sober, like I am. But he was like, look, he actually did his PhD, which super impressed me, with a famous guy called Professor Hoffman, who was the guy who synthesized LSD. So he was like, let me send you all the studies. This was so well researched in the 60s and 50s, and then it became purely illegal for political reasons. It should have never gotten illegal. And you're a biotech guy, so you're going to understand it. Let me say. I was like, okay, I'm always up for new stuff. So that's one of the things in life I think you need to, by the way, and I believe, sorry when I'm jumping now, but this is an integral part of staying healthy. Healthy meaning young in your brain. We talked about a lot about how staying young in the body, but we didn't talk about aging of the brain, which is aging, like physical aging, but also like people, age sort of, they become complacent, whatever. So, and I believe in you need to shock your brain all the time, positively shock with new ideas. So I was, okay, bring it on. I wanna look at new stuff. So he sent me all the stuff, I read it, and it was really compelling. Meaning, again, let's say with magic mushrooms, they were legal, they were used as a medication. We had all the studies in the 60s, and it was a pure political reasons why they became illegal. So it stuck in my mind. It took me a year though, so I'm less adventurous maybe as some might think. So I'm very spiritual. I believe that things are happening at the right moment, in the right moment in life and time. So 1 year later, I was with my dearest friends in the Caribbean, which is an important side note because it's a place where it's legal. And they had real magic mushrooms. Like I saw it was organic, it was homegrown, so to say. And they were like, want to try? And I read so much about it. I called my friend, the guy who told me about it. It was like Shola, and he was like, as a doctor, I tell you, do it. Can't be better. Set and setting. And it was the single most meaningful thing I've ever done in my whole life. Nothing really comes close. And I can't sort of emphasize how important, groundbreaking that was.
Why?
That's very hard to describe. That's one of the sort of, I try, but like as a disclaimer before, the beauty is that you go on a completely different, let's say, as a disclaimer, I just want to be precise, and because I want to be precise, it's so complicated. You can't describe psychedelic use without using religious terms. It's a very spiritual drug. They have been used actually for thousands of years in ceremonial setting. Actually, most religions, actually, including Christianity, are most likely based on psychedelic use. So, but when I use now a religious term, because religion is one of the really like sort of everybody, even if somebody would say he's an atheist, religion is so ingrained in our life that if I use the word if I use the word God or soul, you're gonna have an immediate idea in your mind that it might be different from what I try to say. So it's really a problem of language, because our especially religious terms are so loaded with history and emotions and personal belief. Yeah. So, but ultimately you're going on another level of consciousness where in one way or the other, but interestingly, all the descriptions of people who are doing it are then ultimately similar. Again, they're trying to describe, if you've done it, you immediately know what they want to describe. You meet sort of, you can say, the divine, the core of the universe. Some people would say they meet themselves, which is one of the very, very healing aspects of psychedelics, is that you meet yourself, and in a very positively meant naked, pure form. Call it your soul, your inner self, your whatever, you know what I mean? Like, and this gives you so much insights. You could say this is like the positive effects of psychotherapy within what other people would achieve with 10,000 hours of psychotherapy, you achieve in 4 hours of trip. Yeah. And that is so valuable. It's also, it gives everybody, as it seems, what he or she needs at this certain moment in time. So you might come out and have a total different, let's call it revelation or learning. And these are all also teachers' drugs. Like, again, this is what they were used for thousands of years, for people to learn and grow as a human being. So you might have a different sort of takeaway, because you might need a different lesson or a different learning than I might need at the same time. So also all of my trips, they have been similar and different with the messages or the learnings I had at different points over the last years, and they change. And this is the beauty of it.
What is the kind of manifestation of this in terms of where you're putting capital or the companies that you're building? I know you've got Atai, I know you Compass, like there's kind of a whole bunch of stuff that's going on. How do you think about where you're actually investing, and then also what companies you're building?
Well, so after that trip I had, this was one of the first ideas I had, was like, oh my God, this needs to be legal again, because this is, I mean, I realized if it has such a profound positive experience on me as a happy person, yeah, and again, it made my life tremendously even more happy, yeah, but already starting at a decent sort of level of happiness. I completely understood what I had read before purely on paper, why it works for people who have depression, anxiety, addiction, any form of mental health issue. So I was like, okay, that needs to be legal again. And then I was actually looking around because I was convinced somebody needs to work on that, because these are so powerful substances. And then nobody did. I mean, not in this millennia, so to say, yeah, because it was completely, again, which is one of the saddest part of politics, that that these substances sort of were shut down or were taken away. And then I was looking around, and I can tell the story because you know the other guy. I think it is one of the stories I always use because again, I'm personally very spiritual, and I think things happen at the same time. What happened is I had one later. I mean, for 2 years I was looking around and like talking to scientists, but this was all, again, now everybody talks about psychedelics and you have books about it and people are open about it. But like, it was really like, this was a fringe science and scientists were there. So it's always very important. Yeah, I want to make clear, because I mean, it's obvious, but I did not invent psychedelics. Like, I'm standing on the shoulders of giants. There are cool people who are not around anymore, like Shulgin or Hoffman or whatever, but there are still also very amazing people from back then around, like Rick Doblin, who's running MAPS and whatever. So I tried to get in touch with these people, with scientists, whatever. And then and it's a big shout out to him because, and he's also a shareholder of Atai. So I was in New York after I came. Did not do it in America. So I came from right after Christmas. I had one of the best trips of my life. I was in New York, and on this trip, one of the message was, Christian, you should talk about it more openly because it's so positive, and so you shouldn't be afraid, because the first 2 years I was not like now on a podcast. Like, I was telling my parents, I was telling like friends, yeah, but I was very holding back, yeah, because a lot of people said, don't talk about it. Meaning, you're in finance, like you're an investor, like I have a lot of politicians as friends, like, don't talk about magic mushrooms. And on this one trip, which was a very defining one, the message actually of the trip was, do talk about it. So I went to New York and I met Mike Novogratz. And he was sort of the first person to work on my mission, because Mike was like, you know, Mike, how he is, hey, what you up to? And I was like, well, actually, I just did an amazing magic mushroom trip. And I told Mike the same what I told you for 2 hours, like how amazing it is. And like many other people, he was like, well, that's interesting. I had done it in my youth, like it's a college drug maybe in America, but I haven't done it. And he had not talked about it for 20 years or whatever. So the next day, my phone is ringing. It's Mike. And he was like, Christian, you can't believe it. This is such a rare or weird coincidence. You told me about magic mushrooms yesterday for the first time in 20 years. And one day later, he said, my sister called me. She's on Bali with a crazy couple from London who are working on bringing magic mushrooms back as a depression treatment. And she called Mike and said, from all people I know, you might be crazy enough, to finance these guys. And Mike was like, well, my friend Christian is in London and might be even a bit crazier. Yeah. So, and this is how I met George Goldsmith and his wife, Katya, who were thinking the same. They were, it's the company Compass, and Compass wasn't even existing. They were thinking about starting it and needed a seed investor. But back then, most of the people said, again, don't touch that, can't put money in. Most of the venture funds said, we don't know. Yeah. By the way, although everything we do at Compass and Atai is completely legal because we're running clinical trials, we're not, Anyway, so I met George and Katya, amazing human beings. And after 15 minutes, I was like, you know what? I'm in. Yeah, I'm giving you the money you need to start Compass. And I called Mike because obviously he sort of made the intro and said, you want to be on board? And then I also called my friend Peter Thiel because he's also interested in this crazy kind of stuff. Here we are. So that was the foundation of Compass, which was the first for-profit psychedelic company, again, in this millennium.
And so how does Atai fit in? Like Atai is almost like a holding company that holds equity in Compass and a number of other companies?
So right after we started Compass was always focused on, again, let me be precise, the active ingredient in magic mushrooms and the artificial synthetic version, which is called psilocybin. And the more that I dived into it, this was now 2017, the more I dived into it, I realized, well, there are more psychedelic drugs. And by the way, the brain is also a very complex organ. So there will never be a one drug fits all. There will not even be, I'm not a proponent that, oh, psychedelic drugs will solve everything. I think psychedelic drugs as sort of a universe of drugs are an extremely important part of the tool set, but also other drugs we still have, like SSRIs, psychotherapy, whatever. It's what I think it's you have to give a doctor who knows the patient the tool set, and then he can pick. But so I realized there are more of these psychedelics. There is DMT, which people know because it's the active ingredient of ayahuasca. There is ibogaine, which is the only known compound or only known drug we know, which is completely or has the potential to completely eradicate addiction. Yeah, so if it's used actually in Mexico already in clinics to get people off even heroin and opioids, which is one of the strongest forms of addiction. There are new versions of ketamine who can be very supportive or very helpful against depression. So there are so many. So Compass wanted to focus on psilocybin. So I was like, okay, but I want to work on all the, again, what I told you before, I always want to have a portfolio. So I started Atai as a platform where we build up a very strong team. It's more than a holding, because what I realized is, and Compass is a little bit the exception, because George came out of the sort of business side. He knew how to run and fundraise and whatever. So, but most of the people who actually scientists who were working with these drugs, again, they never stopped. They were just like very fringe. They were not commercial. They didn't know how to raise money. And it's, by the way, it's even a different talent to sort of know everything about a drug, how it works, and then to structure a clinical trial, whatever. So Atai is way more than a holding. We have a strong clinical trial team. Yeah, we have obviously a strong finance team, fundraising. We raised more than $200 million over the last 2 years. And we started actually partnering with a lot of these scientists. Yeah, there is a great colleague, Deborah Mash. She's working on ibogaine since more than 20, I think 30 years. Yeah, she's what Rick Doblin is for MDMA, Deborah is for ibogaine. So we partnered with Deborah, and now have a 50-50 joint venture where we're bringing ibogaine back as a therapy for or against addiction. Yeah, so we started onboarding all of these drugs on our Atai platform, and have now more than 12 new mental health drugs in the pipeline in various stages of clinical trials.
Got it. And so when you think about kind of where the psychedelic space is going, is this something where we'll continue to see kind of acceptance in the medicinal space, and it'll be much more heavily regulated? It'll be for mental health and other type of health issues? Or do you think that we'll eventually see kind of recreational type legislation, and really anyone in the United States will be able to go to a store, they can buy marijuana, they could buy psychedelics, they could buy alcohol, they kind of just have, really free choice across a lot of these different items?
I hope, but I also don't. I also see the future in the medical field for a very simple reason. It's not marijuana. It's not cannabis. It's ways, all these psychedelics, starting from magic mushrooms, they are way stronger, way more potent, which is the beauty of them. But they were never recreational drugs, never. So while marijuana was always used even as a sort of let's say, recreational party side, if you look, and I'm very, very also trying to understand and learn more always about the history of psychedelics, they were always used in a religious ceremonial setting with a guide, call it shaman, call it priest, and a disciple. Yeah, they were never used at home for like just partying. Yeah, but it's very important because they're extremely strong drugs. And part of the upside, and also if you look at patients, and that's what we focused on, part of the healing process is also the interaction with the therapist. So this is not a smarty drug you pop at home and then the disease miraculously goes away. Yeah. So big part of the healing is that you do the trip together with your therapist. And by the way, you might have a bad trip. I don't like the word because bad trips can also be incredibly healing, but they can be very, very challenging. So I like the word challenging trip. Yeah. So, and then especially then, and by the way, especially when trauma is coming up, and trauma is a root for a lot of mental health issues. Yeah. Then even more, you need somebody going through this process with you and literally guiding you through the trip. So, and this is why I'm extremely focused on, and I hope this stays a very strictly medical drug, because also, that doesn't mean, by the way, you and I and whoever wants can grow mushroom at home. Yeah, I'm very pro, and these are, to be precise, I'm very pro decriminalization. So you have practically three pockets. You have the medical pocket, definitely. Then you have the, should it be legal and sold everywhere? Definitely not. Yeah. And then you have sort of these decrim, like, should people who grow it themselves, who know what they're doing, yeah, who maybe do it with a very spiritual background, that should be totally fine. Yeah. And a lot of countries, by the way, like the Netherlands, Portugal, parts of the US now handle it like that. Yeah. But it should not be sold lightly, yeah, on the street ever, or like even not like cannabis in nice shops, to people who don't know and understand the power of it without a guide. Yeah. And that's also, sorry when I talk about it, but because that's really like the essence of what we want to do with the Thai. And I also want to make clear, I had the super luck, as I said 10 times, but like I came from a very happy place. I had the right people around me. So I did have great guides in my first and in the following trip. So everything was right. I had also the money to go to the Caribbean, to be at a nice place. So, but ultimately Atai and Compass, we're doing that stuff because there are hundreds of millions of people out there who have a mental health issue. Yeah, there are more than 300 million people who suffer from depression, and most likely that's just the official number. The unofficial number, because depression and all of that is still a stigma. People don't talk about it. So most likely the real number is even bigger. Yeah, you have hundreds of millions who suffer from addiction, whatever. So, and I really want to make clear, yeah, again, everybody can have a great trip at Burning Man, whatever. Yeah, but like we want to make sure that these people who really need it, and by the way, these are not the people who would go to Burning Man. Yeah, these are the people who need a doctor because they are in a bad place to start. And we want to make sure that these people have access to these amazing, powerful drugs.
Yeah. And so when you think about kind of this biotech bucket, is that literally 1/3 of kind of your focus, fintech's 1/3, deep tech's 1/3, or is biotech, it sounds like it's 50% of your kind of investments, but what about like from a mind share standpoint? Do you spend 50% of your time thinking about biotech versus the other buckets, or is there a difference between the amount of capital that you've deployed versus kind of how you spend your time thinking?
It's very hard to say because my days are changing, whatever is at the moment, sort of, I would say where my companies need me. So I'm extremely, one of our main focus, I would say, and by the way, every investor would say he or she is hands-on. Yeah, but I think we're really hands-on as an investor, mainly because in my heart, I'm an entrepreneur. So as I said, I think I do certain things really well, which an entrepreneur should do well, like all the macro picture, like fundraising, strategy, vision. But I'm not a good operator, so I shouldn't run a business. So this is what I realized is why. So I'm not doing it. Yeah, this way, even for Atai, I founded Atai myself, but I teamed up with great guys, Florian Srini, who running the day-to-day business and doing that super well. So, but like, because I'm in my heart, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm like extremely hands-on and trying to support my portfolio companies wherever I can with whatever they need. So and this fluctuates. So sometimes this company needs me, sometimes there. So it's not, there is no real typical Christian day. They're all a little bit different. And then there's, interestingly, by the way, there is a lot of overlap or synergy. So I have to say, so there would be two people I credit with, or one person and one event, like, which I credit with understanding Bitcoin. 3 people. Mike Novogratz told me first, and I did not listen, which was maybe one of the biggest mistakes. I listened when he called me for mushrooms, but I did not listen early enough when he called me, and he told me, like, this was 2012, you need to buy Bitcoin, and I was like, damn it. So then actually Mike introduced me to Brandon Bloomer, who then again gave me the whole pitch on Bitcoin and EOS. And then I thought about exactly what Brandon told me some weeks later on a mushroom trip. And then I was like, now I get it. So I think, so it's a fun example, like that there is a lot of sort of indirect synergies you learn. And ultimately, I think for an investor, the important thing is you need to stay open. Like you need to want to learn stuff. And I'm a little bit like a puppy. You throw a ball in the air and I'm like, oh my God, this is the nicest ball I've ever seen. Yeah. So like right before we had our call, I spoke to an anthropologist about where humans come from, which I want to learn more about, because we also start investing a lot in brain-computer interface stuff, which ultimately could change what we are as a human. And I think if you want to deal with that stuff, you should understand what makes us human and how can we preserve that in technology. Anyway, I think there is a bigger, I know it sounds like, okay, he's doing biotech, he's doing crypto, he's doing deep tech, but there is for me
you invest the exact same way that I think is the absolute best way to invest, right? And people will think, because we're talking on here, that I'm just saying this, but if you've listened to the podcast before, people will have heard me say, I basically think of the intersection of 2 ideas as the absolute best place to invest. One is things that are on the fringes of society, but will become mainstream in the future, right? So if you kind of think of, they're the most asymmetric type of opportunities, because you're basically making a bet on a space or a company before everyone else thinks that is a thing. And when it goes from a contrarian idea to a consensus idea, there's incredible upside to be captured, and that's where you get the asymmetry. But the second thing also is you invest along very long time horizons, right? You're not day trading stocks. You're not kind of doing a lot of that stuff. You are looking at things that are going to take, years, if not decades, to kind of come to fruition. And so what that allows for is a very long period of time for the capital and to compound because of innovation. And so to me, it's all tied together, because it's basically, you're looking at, society, if you will. You're going to the fringes and you're saying, what are the things that today are accepted at the fringes, but not yet at the mainstream? And how do I basically put stakes in the ground in the things I believe in there? And then as they kind of get pulled into the mainstream, they become consensus ideas. Obviously, they will accrue tons and tons of value. Is that fair?
Perfect summary. And I would add one more important point. I just invest in companies and people and ideas which somehow excite me, because I don't need to do it. I'm not running a fund. I have enough that I could stop. I don't want to stop. I always would describe it. Everything I'm doing is my constant hobby. That's the only reason I can, because in work terms, I think I work a lot. Yeah. But it doesn't feel like work. It feels super exciting, because I would do exactly the same. If you would say, I give you 4 more weeks, I was like, well, then that's what I'm doing, because I love it. Yeah. So, and one of the things I love, and by the way, it's always important, if I come back to self-exploration of psychedelics, that doesn't mean this is the way to do it, because I think one of the most important things with psychedelics was, and I had that already before with meditation, and there are other techniques, you need to know what you want as a human being. Yeah. But I want that. That's what excites me. I want to always see new stuff, and I want to invest in things and companies and ideas and human beings who shape the world I hopefully gonna live in for a very long time. Yeah, so I want to contribute a little bit to the world, which I will be a consumer, so to say, hopefully, as I said, for a very long time.
I love it. Let's talk about Bitcoin before I let you go. You described a little bit about how you kind of came across Bitcoin. What's your view on it today? How do you think about it within your portfolio? Did you just go buy a bunch of Bitcoin and you're sitting on it? Are there other things that you're doing in the space? Just talk to me kind of about your philosophy and how you're gaining kind of exposure to that asset and industry.
Yeah. Well, I'm not trading. Yeah, I'm not trading in anything. Like, so I'm not. That's just not. You can't do both. I have the long-term view, and I'm preaching, I think, to the super converted like you and your viewers. But I think it's so simple. If you look at at what politicians, by the way, on both sides of the spectrum, so both left-wing and right-wing politicians in Europe, in America, everywhere, they are hooked on. They are like opioid addict, like they are addicted to money printing. And I think there is no good outcome, and you can't come off. I think it's a very strong structural addiction, which I don't think they will overcome. I don't also think it's going to be completely blowing in our face, but I think that fiat currencies will gradually but very strongly devaluate over the next, and it has already started, but I think the last 10 years were just a tiny bit of start in what we're going to see in the devaluation of fiat currencies. And they're all doing the same. So you don't have an escape that you say, oh, I go to this currency or that one. It's a global phenomenon. Yeah, because, by the way, meaning philosophically or observing, it's because also we're living people don't want to suffer. Yeah, you can say this is good, but like if I think about, and I come back to fiat currency in a second, when I lived through the first real crisis. In crisis, I mean the economic crisis. This was like the 2000 crash, and then 2001 when the two planes, it flew in a twin tower. Yeah, that was a real recession. Yeah, and it was similar than COVID because it was not my fault. Yeah, I was sitting there as a small entrepreneur. Yeah, there was a global recession, but back then nobody would have said, "Well, terrorists flew in the twin tower. It's not the fault of." Companies, tech startups, we're going to help you and throw money at you. No, back then, most of the companies went bankrupt. And it was healthy, by the way. I'm very skeptical that we pumping so much money in it. Yeah, and then even in 2008 in the crisis, meaning again, was Lehman my fault? Yeah, no, but I had to go through it. Stocks I owned were going down. Companies had a hard time, and nobody was helping because that's normally how economic life was seen. You go through cycles, and normally cycles are always an external shock. It's never you who sort of is responsible. Anyway, and somehow we switched, but this is also a little bit the sort of the zeitgeist is that we don't want to suffer. Suddenly, yes, COVID is bad and COVID is an external shock, but it's just another external shock. And we could just have said, look, let's use that to sort of let company go bankrupt, let things go. The weak ones, meaning Darwinian theory, but we didn't. We said, hey, no, we don't want to suffer. People shouldn't lose their job. Blah, blah, blah. Let's throw money on it. Yeah, and I think they can't stop. So people will always now say, hey, there is a way easier way than suffering. Why don't we just print money? Yeah. So that's going to be, and there will always be problems. After COVID, there will be another problem. Anyway, having said that, I think we're going into this 10, 20-year cycle of fiat currency devaluation, which, by the way, means any solid asset will go up. Yeah. So this is why tech is going up, biotech is going up, and there will be obviously within that mega cycle there will be ups and downs. But and Bitcoin is the sort of synonym for stability or for the opposite. Yeah. For integrity. Yeah. For politicians not being able to meddle with it. So I think among that, as I said, biotech I think is one. Tech, fintech, and Bitcoin, are sort of the core pillars of my asset allocation.
Do you do any real estate investing?
A tiny bit.
Maybe
too little. I do think interest rates might go up. So I do real estate, but not on a large scale. And I think what we could see, which I think would be a little bit of in that mega cycle of currency devaluation, it doesn't mean that everything is going up like a straight line. What my view is, my macro view is that next year going to be one of the craziest positive years of our lives, because I think they're pumping money in the market as long as COVID is there. And in the moment COVID is over, people will spend like hell. So my fun quote is like, in the medieval ages, there were like orgies for years straight after the Black Death. Yeah. So, and in a certain way, we're going to bring the orgies on. Like, we're going to go on holidays. We're going to go on concerts. Like, people will spend as there is no tomorrow, my view. So we're going to see an overshooting economy. And that could, for the first time since 10 years or whatever, lead to inflation. Yeah, because so far, despite, which is interesting, despite the money printing, we didn't see consumer price inflation. We saw asset price inflation already. Yeah, but if consumer price inflation comes, which I think could come at least for a period, yeah, then they need to take interest rates a little bit up, and that could be extremely sort of negative for the short term for real estate, even for tech, by the way, because a lot of the tech valuations are sort of kind of pegged to the super low zero interest rate environment.
Absolutely. Before I get into the rapid fire questions to wrap this up, what's the most contrarian idea you have right now? Like, what's the thing that you believe, and if you say it, other people will be shocked that you believe it?
Isn't that the famous Peter Thiel question?
he I think likes what you ask, or like what you believe that other people disagree with. Like what's the secret that you know that other people don't know? I'm asking more about like, what is the thing that you believe that other people will be surprised that you believe?
It's a good question. Well, yeah, funny, I mean, we talked about all the controversial stuff, which is suddenly not controversial anymore, about psychedelics and longevity, whatever.
To me, it's more something that violates how people perceive you, right? So, like, let's say, for example, somebody who is really religious, right? All of a sudden, them saying, "I actually don't believe in God," that would surprise people about that person. And so, what is the thing that, based on either the work you do, the lifestyle you live, the person that you are, that maybe you have a belief that's counter to what people would expect it to be?
A good question. I told you, I think, but it's not counter, because I'm personally actually very spiritual. Yeah. So, but that's, everybody knows that. So, nothing comes. I'm always pretty open with what I believe. So it's not, I would say, honestly, I think if I had something I really believe in, you would already know, because one of the things was always like, I had this big luck that I had success early on. And I was like, I don't need to please anybody. Hopefully people like me. I actually want to be liked. This is why I couldn't go in politics. Like, I hope people do like me, but I don't need to. So I always thought, like, be open and that's what, and actually it served me so well. I mean, you always have then one or two negative experiences where people abuse that openness, but in general, again, take the magic mushroom thing. If I wouldn't have been open, again, in a time where it was not sort of convenient to be open about magic mushrooms, we wouldn't sit here. Like, I wouldn't have compass, I wouldn't have a tie. Yeah. So being open about what I think actually served me well. So there is nothing hidden, I would say.
I love that answer. I always ask everyone the same two questions, and you'll get to ask me one at the end. The first is, what's the most important book that you've ever read?
Think and Grow Rich, by far.
Wait, why that one? That's one of my three.
Because it made me to a certain extent. I really want to say that strongly. I really still know it. I went in a bookshop in Munich when I was 14 years old. And there was, again, I believe in that stuff. So there was just like these, I think in English you call it epiphany. Yeah. So I go into this bookshop, and there was these, which is not, I think it's not around anymore. It was a very famous one, Hugendubel, for the Germans listening, in Munich. And then, and I went in, and there was this massive wall of books, all Think and Grow Rich. And I was like, as a 14-year-old, oh my God, this is it. Like, was literally like a religious epiphany. So I bought the book, and I think it's a beautiful description. For the Germans, the title is a little bit, because in Germany, we don't like to talk about money so much. It's a little bit a different culture. Like in America, it's a very American book. It made me actually very American. I think for a German guy, German friends over there, Christian is very, very Americanized in his thinking. And this is due to this book. Yeah. And I think, though, it's so timeless. And I read it maybe 30 times. Yeah, because I think it's really like it works. Yeah. And then later on, I read more books, again, more on the spiritual side of the spectrum, like Law of Attraction, which though are the same sort of takeaways in different wording. Yeah. So I always think for the ones who don't want to go too sort of spiritual crazy at the beginning, like this is a beautiful, easy to serve, timeless wisdom. So yeah.
I always tell people 3 books that I read when I was 20, 21 years old, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Think and Grow Rich. And what is the other one? Oh man, now I'm going to blank on it. No, Think and Grow Rich. It'll come to me. Napoleon Hill, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
There is another guy, Murphy, has similar, it's all the same age, almost the same, out of the same time.
Richest Man in Babylon. That's what it is.
Which one?
The Richest Man in Babylon.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Those 3 books.
It's all the same messaging.
Yes.
And it works, by the way. Funnily, you meet, and again, not a lot of people want to talk about it because it's either they think, oh, this is too simple to sort of say my success is based on that, or in Germany, you would say you don't want to admit that you read a book and were fascinated by it when you were 14, which is called Think and Grow Rich. Yeah. But it is like, I think everything, if you think about how messed up our education system is, every child should read it. I think we would do the world an enormous favor.
What about second question, which is more fun? Aliens. Are you a believer or a non-believer?
I definitely a believer there are aliens. So statistically, everything, this is like, yeah. The question is, are they sort of, there are all these sub-questions, like, are they still there? Are they already extinct? Can they come to us if they hear that? So, but I think yes, I think there are aliens. The question is, I don't know if we're going to make contact. But I definitely think there are.
All right. Do you think that we've already made contact?
I think yes. But you mean now, like in our lifetime, like we as us, our generation, or us as humans?
Humans.
Yes. I think so. Psychedelics are so amazing because you meet so many amazing people. I just had, by the way, another thing, which is maybe not, I don't want to jump now from aliens to that because he's not talking about aliens, but what goes in that direction is, I think what I'm thinking a lot, and which is my sort of reading list for the holidays, is we know so little still where we come from. Yeah, and so I had this fascinating Zoom chat a week ago with Graham Hancock. Do you know Graham Hancock? Mm-hmm. Yeah, amazing guy. His books, I started reading. Some of them have the whole reading list. And so I think we shouldn't not exclude the alien question, the same, like maybe there were high cultures 20,000 years ago, which completely got lost. I think we're too stiff even in science. I think people, and that's what actually is worrying me a bit. You have on the one side, you have actually the entrepreneurs who and which I think is the right way to go, is like sort of the sky's the limit and why not think about that and why not think about that? But somehow society is sort of very conformistic. So maybe that's a point. People always think, I'm gay, I'm liberal, but I'm not so sure if the left, if there is the left, is going in the right direction. And this is saying with precaution, because we're too conformistic. Actually, they think they are colorful, but we sort of narrowing down too much, and thoughts which are not allowed to be thought, and there should be no thought which should not be allowed to be thought. We should be way more open to thinking, okay, why not? Is this the right thing? You know what I mean? I think we're becoming a little bit, is this whole new generation, I hate political correctness. I think it's so wrong. Why should I can decide if somebody is offending me, I turn around and go away, but nobody can offend me. Everybody can say anything. we shouldn't be like so snowflakey. That's maybe what, if to come back to your question, people might not think about me, but I think we should be way more, and we completely losing, especially in politics, the power of debate. Yeah, we cannot sort of, the whole safe space idea is completely alien to me, because it doesn't mean people need to be safe, but like say, so we need to discuss things. You can't shut down discussions, especially when they're unpleasant. Yeah, then we need to have them, and then we need to think about it. Again, we need to shock our brain with new things all the time and not being conformistic all the way.
I could not agree more. I think that is one of the craziest parts of the world that we live in today, is that there are certain things that we can't talk about. And one of my favorite lines is from Joe Rogan. He basically says, look, once an idea goes from being able to be discussed to not, we've now transformed into a religion, right? Yes. You literally you enter into religion's kind of field. All right. So
that is a good point, because that's the fine line I said so often, because it's important for my life that I'm spiritual, but organized religion always turned bad. In most of the cases. And by the way, that's the sad part. If you look at most religions were actually based on psychedelics. For everybody's viewing, read a book, and I told you before, you should get him on a podcast, because that's a whole different topic. Like Brian Muraresku, he wrote The Immortality Key about the origins of religions based on psychedelics. But what happened, so all religions were based on psychedelics, or most of them, yeah, including most likely Christianity. At the beginning, they were very inclusive and spiritual. But then when they turned into an organization, people were actually saying, hey, let's exclude the thinkers, the new ideas, because you can't run an organization with people speaking to God every day. So, and then every religion, if you look at Christianity, Islam, whatever, they went through a phase where they burned the heretics. Yeah, but the heretics were the ones who normally, if you look back now, they were the spiritual ones. They were the ones who took psychedelics, who were like so. And we going through like a new era where we start burning the heretics, and where sort of an originally good idea, sort of the liberal left, which was great. They fought for many things which are important for me personally. I wouldn't be like to be gay in the 50s. So it was extremely valuable. But then somewhen it starts to become, as you say, out of something humanitarian, out of something good, it starts becoming a religion. And then a religion starts burning the heretics. And that's actually almost burning your own origins. Yeah, and that's very sad.
Absolutely. You could ask me one question to wrap this up. What do you got for me?
What's the most the other question around, because I'm always interested in new technologies or new ideas. What's the craziest contrarian idea you have seen, or in your podcasts or in your discussions, where I should look at?
I don't know if it's necessarily crazy or contrarian. I think the space that is going to be much better than people expect. Obviously there's Bitcoin. I think including me, everyone is underestimating how big this thing will get. But we'll see. But there's a lot of talk about kind of brain computer interfaces. So how do I take something and I put it in my brain? Yeah. I think a lot of interesting things are going to come out of the idea of how do I tell my brain how does my brain tell computers what to do? And what I mean by that is, I recently invested in a company called Atom Limbs that basically they've got prosthetics. So let's say a prosthetic arm, and it's connected so that when I think, I can literally move the fingers, I can pick things up, I can do things, and it operates just like a regular arm would, and it's being controlled by my brain, right? And so when you start to think about the brain is a two-directional computer basically, and so yes, we can definitely augment it. We can put things into the brain. We can do all kinds of great stuff, everything from just eating healthier, not drinking lots of alcohol, kind of natural type stuff, to literally augmenting it with technology. But also I think about this idea of connecting your brain to computers and having your brain somehow, very quickly tell the computers what to do. I don't quite yet know all the different ways that that'll be applied, but that to me feels like a big space that no one's talking about.
I actually think that's going to be something like an iPhone is today, which is going to be applied to everything, because we actually interacting in a very archaic way with our phone, with typing, which is very archaic. So they're trying to upgrade it to to language, Siri, whatever. But the natural thing would be just thinking. Yeah. And I think there is no, meaning I give it 10 years, maybe 15. And I saw another company, I'm going to bring it on like somewhere next year when it's out of stealth, but like they believe, and it's more than belief because they have the basic technology for it. In 10, 15 years, we can do telepathy, not because it's magic, but because if you already, exactly what you say, if you already can now tell your arm what to do, or a prosthetic arm, yeah, so that is your brain thinking and sending a message, yeah. The next step is that your brain will be able to interact with your computer, that you can dictate an email by thinking of it. But if that happens, I can equally send you a message to you from brain to brain. And and this is what I said before. This is why I'm so interested in sort of the origins of humanity, because this will ultimately change what we now think is human. So we need to go to the very core, what really defines of being human, and then preserve that while we might leave behind things which we think now is human, but maybe in 20 years is not anymore.
Could not agree more. Where can we send people to find out more about all the things you're working on or find you on the internet?
I actually started posting a lot on LinkedIn because I think, meaning I like Twitter as well. Twitter is sometimes a little bit negative. So I think LinkedIn is more friendly. That's another thing. I don't know why people are so negative to each other, especially on Twitter. Twitter is, I think, not good for your brain, meaning I'm using it. I'm posting stuff if I want to say something, announce something, but I think it's like always when I start using it, I get sad and then I let it go, like, because I don't want to be sad. LinkedIn, I think, is the best.
That's fair, man. Listen, thank you so much for doing this. You are
amazing. I love to talk about what excites me. So thank you very much. It was awesome.